Men of Reddit, what are the struggles of dating a very rich girl? This is probably gonna get buried, but I've always wanted to write it out. I was never sure how rich she was. I just knew her family had property in a couple places in the US and China. And this is also how I found out property in China is dumb expensive. When she went for the holidays, if she wanted to say, stay in Shanghai and then go to Beijing later, she didn't have to look at hotels or Airbnb, she just had to make sure she grabbed the right set of keys. It was weird. She wasn't dripping with designer clothes and drove a fuel efficient compact, but just looking at where her family had apartment/houses, I can only imagine. She was a super sweet, down to earth girl. Biggest heart in the world, very hardworking, and acted like a child in a candy shop everywhere she went. I think the biggest strain came when we would eat together. For me, money was tight and the best way to stretch my college scholarship money was to cook meals in bulk. Before she met me, she ate out literally every single meal. At first, it took some adjusting and rebudgeting. Bless her heart, she understood and found compromises. She loved my cooking and would surprise me with groceries and then say I have to pay her back by cooking whatever she wanted. Every once in a while she'd pick up the entirety of a bill that we were supposed to split, but she always found a way to make sure I didn't feel down about it. I don't think she ever once bought me an expensive gift. Most things were either handmade or were very thoughtful, for example shoes I'd been eating for months but couldn't afford, and she noticed them in my computer browser. I miss that girl. I hope she's doing well. My girlfriend, now wife, wasn't rich herself, but had very rich parents, both lawyers, one in family law, the other in corporate counsel, but they were pretty normal during her upbringing. The law careers and massive salaries came when she was a teenager. The toughest thing was that her parents would offer to pay for nearly anything, but later try to use that as leverage to control her when they didn't like what she was doing. She was college aged, so it happens a bit. Parents and teenagers aren't perfect. Things like stop paying for her car suddenly or reneging on a trip that they offered to pay for and she booked, and was suddenly on the hook for the cost. It was certainly toxic from their end, and she kept falling for it each time. However, in her 20s, once she was out of college and employed, she didn't need their money, so anything that was offered with strings attached or had the potential to do that, she could just decline. They learned pretty quickly that manipulation via finances isn't a good way to foster a relationship with your daughter in her 20s. Her mom figured it out, her dad not so much. For unrelated reasons they got divorced, and her relationship is still very strained with her dad. If you're coming from a very poor family, as was my case, expect a lot of butting of heads when it comes to financial issues. I was raised very poor. Now I make a decent amount of money, but if I'm ever in a situation where I have a lot of expenses and may run into financial issues, I tend to panic a little bit and plan my spending extremely carefully. My wife came from a wealthy family and she never had to deal with financial struggles at any point in her life. And she doesn't quite care about spending a lot of money. Basically, she doesn't think past the fact that we can afford something. She doesn't think about possibly needing money in the future, and that's where we always butt heads. In short, make sure you ask her to let you know before she spends more than X amount. That was the solution we came up with, and it has actually saved us from a lot of financial trouble. Spending should be a thing you both agree on, otherwise it's not going to work out. Admitting financial struggles. When my wife and I were dating in university, her family invited me up to their cottage during the break between Christmas and New Year's to ski, skate and otherwise play in the snow. I wanted to go, but I didn't know how to ski and had no outdoor clothing appropriate to be out in the snow. No ski jacket, pants, or boots. I declined the invitation, but my then girlfriend was really sad and asked why. I had to admit I didn't have the gear needed, and I couldn't afford them. She then passed it on to her family, and when I visited them on Christmas Day, they led me to a room with 3 types of everything new with tags laid out on a bed for me to choose from. It was a wonderful gesture, but I had mixed feelings. I appreciated the gear very much, but I felt like a charity case. Also, managing expectations of my wife for travel and expectations with children's activities. She was used to jetting away whenever they felt like it and had her own horses growing up. That's just not an option for us. We do okay and we are happy, but horses are not financially viable. Let me tell a story that I think will provide a nice contrast to the majority of the comments here. This story isn't mine, but that of a close friend's brother. So Joe went away to college and met Sarah there halfway through freshman year. They were on again off again for a few months before deciding to date seriously in junior year. They met each other's families on vacation or when they would come to visit their kids at school. By all accounts, Sarah's family was polite and nice and relatively laid back. Not a whiff of arrogance or anything like that. Fast forward to the end of senior year. Joe's paternal grandfather is on his deathbed and Joe desperately wants to go say goodbye. However, they go to school in a small town with a private airport. Think Cessnas, and the closest major airport is several hours away by car, and neither of them have a car. Said airport also didn't have a direct flight, so it would have been pushing 24 hours until he got to the hospice center to see his grandfather. This was destroying Joe, as he and grandpa were very close, and he was essentially a second father to him. Without a word, Sarah pulled Joe into a cab and took him to the airport. Waiting for them was Sarah's family's private plane. Joe and my friend and her family were all astounded. They had no idea Sarah's family was wealthy, and especially not private plane wealthy. Anyways, off Joe went, and he said goodbye and he flew coach back to school. Sarah never said a word about it one way or the other and neither did Joe. They are now married, and both doing well in their careers. And from what I can tell live a very normal life. But every once in a while they disappear off to some remote island or jungle or mountain for a few days a year, and don't tell anyone but their family where they're going. I guess I had a different type than everyone else. We worked together, and you wouldn't know she was rich unless you really got to know her. She worked as a diversion, something to do, and meet new people. She never looked at the price of anything. Had a $5,000 watch, Dolce & Gabbana glasses she would break at least once a month cause she's clumsy. Very humble, very sweet and probably the hardest worker there. We were managers. The issue was that there was absolutely nothing we could do together that was new to her. She had more money and free time. Her bucket list was completed by 22. There was nothing new or fresh within my, I don't know the word, realm, ability. We got along great, and I found out from a mutual friend she was excited to be with someone not using her or groveling cause she was *Q levels of rich. It was my pride I think that ruined it, nothing she did. I had issues letting her pay for everything, and I was unable to show her anything she hadn't seen. I stopped being fun because I couldn't wow or impress her, and it got in my head. She was perfectly happy doing normal things, but it wasn't enough for me. I had to impress her. We lost contact years ago. I hope she's doing well. She was ducking awesome and deserves to be happy. Not the man, but the rich girl. I hope you guys are interested in my story. I come from a family who built their way in the world and got very wealthy. Growing up my parents had me and my sister working regular jobs, so we would learn the value of money. It worked. Back then, I was not allowed to date anyone until I was 18. Not that I ever cared, because I was a nerd and preferred my video games to real people. When I got older and nature decided to kick in, I was starting college, and I met a guy. He was very handsome, and did not seem to care who my family was. I was pleased, because most people would fake to be my friends, because of my background. That lasted until I met his parents. He was from a lower middle class family and his parents were all about the what are the neighbors going to think mindset. They are so excited about me that they started being so weird, buying immerseds that they could not afford, buy nice clothes, expensive wines. The guy just got terrible after a few years. We moved together in a very nice downtown condo and he went mad. He loaded his credit card to buy expensive watches, suits, shoes. My dad got him a job in a good company and I guess he thought he was a big shot now. I left him about 6 months later because he was trying to change me into a trophy wife. He was getting upset if I did not have my coupon, or if I was gaming in my PJs all day / night, because you know, if someone would have knocked the door and I was dressed like that, what would they have thought? When I left, I was still paying for the condo he was living in. His parents were harassing me about their son's future and trying to manipulate me into going back. I'm not that stupid. I tried to get him to buy me out of the condo. He did not want it to. We got into a massive legal fight. It was terrible. I have other stories if you are interested. Sorry for the English, not my first language. My buddy married a super rich girl from China. He grew up in the suburbs and came from an economically poor family. He went from rags to riches, literally started from nothing. I remember growing up as kids, he'd eat mayonnaise sandwiches at school. He changed quite a bit. He went from having nothing that was branded to suddenly having everything, including a brand new Porsche. He was outfitted with super expensive clothes, lost a bunch of weight, and turned out pretty good for himself. Anyway, he later discovered that his in-laws were just using him for immigration / business purposes, since he's a citizen here, and he ended up divorcing his wife, having no kids. Half of nothing is, well, nothing. He got a divorce with the clothes on his back and his car that he was given. Since the divorce, he got a high-paying corporate job making 6 figures, still has all his luxury goods, and is currently dating someone who looks like a supermodel. Oh yeah, and he still has his Porsche SUV. Holy ducking shit, why can't this happen to me? Edit. He's also super generous with money. On numerous occasions he would buy drinks, dinners, give money to friends in actual need, and feed the poor. Since he grew up poor, he's sort of careless with money, since he never really had it to begin with. He grew up with a minimalist lifestyle. His marriage literally changed his life. Edit 2. His advantage over his ex-wife was the fact that they both hated university. His ex-wife dropped out of university, but he had the nerve to keep going and actually complete his program, which is why he's making so much now, as this became his backup plan after his divorce. Edit 3. I shared this post with my friend and he smiled. You could tell he got a bit choked up / emotional because he just stared at it r/wholesome Reddit. Thanks for making his day, everyone. Back in the day, I met this rich girl in the comments section of my favorite YouTube channel. We dated for years. She bought me cars and houses every time I caught the flu. It didn't help with the flu, but I loved it. She was no doctor. Ha ha ha. We have 2 kids together. None are mine. I'm staying for the money. Subscribe, like, share and comment to be lucky as me in your future. Let me go dive in my money. Have a happy life, human.